What an exciting time to be alive, to see and witness the mighty things in the prophecy being fulfilled every day. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about the men clothed in white linen. I encourage my audience to have an open mind. These are deep and holy concepts. They're not easily understood, but we can see the fulfillment of the prophecy as we have decoded Daniel chapter 7 with Revelation. Now, Daniel was taken to the throne as a type and shadow of the Son of Man appearing before the Ancient of Days with the books were open. We saw that in the previous video, decoding Daniel chapter 7. But we've also talked about Daniel chapter 10, 11, and 12 with Alpha and Omega, the angel Gabriel, Michael, the angel of the covenant, the men in white linen, as well as the kings of Persia. We're on this series of videos looking and studying who are these people, who are these angels, what is taking place. Well, the men clothed in white linen is a deep concept. One of them is one of the four angels. We have the four angels message. We have discussed it. One of them is the angel of the covenant. Okay, so in Daniel's timeline, Daniel chapter 8, we see the timeline and we see these days, 1,290 days, 1,335 days. I encourage you to go back to watch these videos, guys, determining 1,335 days. That's a previous video, but in this one, we're talking about the army, okay, that comes with the Lord of hosts. They are clothed with white linen. And at the marriage supper of the Lamb, they are clothed in white linen, which is the righteousness of the saints. So the white linen is both angels and men. The men clothed in white linen. In this video, guys, we're going to talk about the men clothed with white linen. And as you can see, we have this white shirt. And right next to it, you can see the blood, the Passover blood of the Lamb. So they overcome, they washed their garments and made them white in the blood. So in Passover, it's a sacrifice of the Lord Jesus Christ, where he was our sacrificial lamb, and they placed the blood on the doorpost of the house. That was Passover. And then what? The judgments must pass over. Okay? So it says of the great multitude, they must go into great tribulation and wash their garments by the blood of the Lamb. Now, this is important because we are now in the time of the seventh trumpet. In the time of the seventh trumpet, okay, the seventh trumpet comes after the first trumpet. The first trumpet was the sign of the woman clothed with the sun. Okay. And then it says she went into the wilderness 1,260 days. Now we're going to explain those 1,260 days and how they're important to the white linen. You can see it right here in Revelation 15:5. After that, I looked and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was open. Let me say that again. After that, I looked and behold, the temple of the tabernacle. Now, what this is saying specific is, yes, there's a temple. Yes, there's a tabernacle, but the tabernacle of the testimony was opened in heaven. Now, this was open on the first day of the first month with Moses. So Moses built a tabernacle, and he was instructed to set it up and to dedicate it in the vessels on the first day of the first month. That's when the tabernacle started. It was dedicated on the first day, first month, which is precisely 1,260 days from the sign of the woman clothed with the sun. Actually, there's more to the calculation than that, guys. I'm just giving you a basic reference. And then what it says, and the seven angels came out of the temple, having the seven last plagues, clothed in pure and white linen, having their breasts girded about with golden girdles. Okay, so we have these men clothed with the white linen coming out of the temple, okay, on the precise day, 1,260 days from Revelation 12, okay? So that's why we're talking about the men clothed with white linen, because they come on the scene at a precise moment in time after these seven trumpets. In the seventh trumpet, it's the days of the seventh trumpet. So in those days of the seventh trumpet, that's when you see this opening up. And then it says, and one of the four living creatures gave unto the seven angels the golden vials or bowls full of the wrath of God. So then they get their clothed in white linen. They have the bowls full of the wrath of God who lives forever. And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God, from his power, and no man was able to enter into the temple till the 7 last plagues were fulfilled. Okay? So that's many times we could see the glory of God coming down on the tabernacle with Moses, right? So that begin, and then that ushers in Revelation 16, and just mention it briefly. We're going to have it in the notes. But when we get to verse 15, behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. Okay? So that warning comes at the 6th angel, okay, to keep our garments. Now, let's look at our notes. I encourage you to get the notes. I'll make those available. And let's continue our study on the men clothed with white linen. Now, let me show you something amazing. Okay. What we have here is, this is the calendar. This is the year 2021. The year begins in the spring. So in the first month, in the first day of the month, it's the month of Passover. So this is Passover. That's the Feast of Unleavened Bread, okay, which is the first day of the first month. And then you say, okay, well, where is that in the Gregorian calendar? The first day of the first month is March 17th, okay? It's March 17th. Now, I want you to notice something, that on our calendar of March 17th, we have the priest course of Abijah. So all these days here are the priest course of Abijah. March 20th and the preceding week. If you don't know what that means, I don't have the time to explain it. We've been talking about that in previous videos, and its great significance of the times of the prophecy in the calendar, okay? So that's the priestly calendar, the calendar of Zadok. I'm just going to say that. If you understand, great. If you don't, we'll make reference to previous videos of that significance. Now, here are our notes. We do have 2 pages, and this is the Counsel of the Saints. You can see our title, The Counsel of the Saints, the men clothed in white linen. This is part 1, part 2 of the notes, okay? And inevitably, when we talk about deep concepts like this, and people are just used to like church, kind of baby doctrines and stuff, they inevitably will ask, why do we have to study this? Well, it's the Bible, okay? And the Bible explains the tribulation and the time of the second coming of Christ. And in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 10, the Apostle Paul says, in the dispensation of the fullness of times, okay? So in the dispensation of Christ's second coming, okay, that he might gather together in one all things in Christ, in heaven, okay? Gather together things in heaven and the earth. Okay, so the things in heaven and the earth come together in one in Christ's second coming. So the angels are involved and the people are alive on the earth are involved. Now the principalities and powers in heavenly places might be made known. So what this means is that the principalities and powers, most of you watch Illuminati stuff, and the devil is not in control. Okay, the principalities and powers are the angels, are the hosts, the cherubim, those around the throne, to prove, as we've been saying, that the Most High rules amongst the kingdoms of men. Okay, the Most High is the one in control, not the devil. Understand? So it behooves us to understand the principalities and powers around the throne, and it's very important for us because this is how you interpret the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. And so, when we do, let's start with Christ's first coming. In his first coming, when his tomb was open, we see the men clothed with white linen. All right? In Mark 16, verse 5, and entering into the sepulchre, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, clothed in a long white garment. And they were afraid. And he said, he is risen, and go tell the disciples. Okay, so this is the first ones at the tomb, and the women, when they saw a man clothed in white linen. Okay, and we have the account of this also in Luke and Matthew. Let's look at it. So Luke 24, verse 4, behold, two men stood by them in shining garments. Now, when we have this account, guys, it's very interesting. There is one right answer. All the Gospels are talking about the same thing, but a slightly different representation of each. Okay? Now, it is one message, okay? Because the men clothed in white linen, they can be one witness. There can be one witness that we see throughout the theme of the men clothed white linen, okay? And there can be two witnesses. So that's what we're witnessing here, where we have these accounts. One of them says a young man, okay? One of them says two men stood by in shining garments. Now, these are the same situation, same account in the Gospels, okay? But in Matthew, we have an even more interesting account. And his countenance was like the lightning, and his raiment was white as snow. And the angel said, okay, so now we saw a young man, we saw two men, and now we see an angel. All right, so this is what I'm saying, guys. I'm not going to explain this. I'm just going to read what the scriptures say. And I'm just saying the Holy Spirit is not confused. He's saying everything for a reason, okay? So what this means is that the men clothed with white linen, okay, there can be one witness, there can be two. Now, we know when Christ on Transfiguration show his, Peter, James, and John, his glory, they saw with him what? Two men. They saw Elijah and Moses. So that's why we're calling this the Counsel of the Saints. So the Counsel of the Saints means that the saints, okay, God is not God of the dead, but he's God of the living. The saints are in council to determine the prophecy. Okay, so there are things that were written that Christ fulfilled to the letter. Okay, yet there were some things he went into counsel with Moses and Elijah. So there can be two witnesses, two men clothed in white linen that are witnesses, okay, to bear witness to, in this case, Christ, his first coming, his tomb. He is risen. So the message is simple. He is risen. Now we're going to come back to Christ and his first coming and the tomb with the white linen later in the video. But let's keep going. So now we can see, okay, you got young man, two men, and an angel. So, I mean, just amazing. Now let's go to Revelation. We get to Revelation 22. It says, one of them said, see, in the Greek, it's hora. So this is see, this is a watcher. Okay, see not. Because John was bowing to this person. For I am your fellow servant. Okay, so this person is saying, I'm your fellow servant and of your brethren, the prophets. Okay, so this is seemingly making an indication that this person is a prophet, is one of the Old Testament prophets that is speaking to John. And of them which keep the sayings of the book. Okay, keep the sayings of the book of Revelation. Worship God, he says. Okay, so that's one of the angels. This angel, he is an angel, but he also says he's the brother in the prophets. So they're in one, guys. You can't really often separate or distinguish unless you yourself see who it is who's speaking. That's what we're getting at here. And so he is a fellow servant of the brother and the prophets, which keep the sayings of the book. So he explains to John New Jerusalem. Okay, so he is one of the seven angels with the seven last plagues. Okay, and he shows John New Jerusalem. Now there's another one of the seven angels, the seven last plagues, that shows Mystery Babylon. Okay, and the beast and the Antichrist. Okay, now John bows to him too, and he says, see not. And he says something similar. I am your fellow servant and of your brethren that have the testimony of Jesus. So he has the testimony of Jesus. Okay, just like the two men at the time of Christ, his first coming, he is risen. Okay, so they have the testimony of Jesus. Okay, and the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Okay. So that's what they're saying. So I'm not saying that there's an easy way to understand what's going on, because we have indications of a watcher angel with the word see means hora, and that's the word, that's actually a Hebrew word where we get the word watcher in the book of Daniel, which we'll look at, okay? But he says, I'm a fellow servant of your brother, which have the testimony of Jesus. Worship God. For the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So it's the testimony, guys. It's what are we testifying to? Okay? That's the message that they make it clear. Okay? Give glory to God. Okay? So there's this council of the saints, of men clothed with white linen, that will appear and interpret the matters, the prophecy. Okay? Now in Colossians 1:12, it says, giving thanks unto the Father, which has made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints. Okay? So what we're seeing is we're seeing examples of the inheritance of the saints. The saints are not dead. They are alive. Okay? The saints, the inheritance of the saints in light. And he has delivered us from darkness and translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son. Okay, so these are promises in the scriptures about this council of the saints in the men clothed with white linen that we can clearly see in Ephesians and Colossians chapter 1. Now let's go and look at Daniel, and Daniel being an example, just like John, okay? We can see John, as we saw before, but now let's go to Daniel. And we can see that Daniel was the remnant. So guys, before Jerusalem was destroyed and everything else, there was a remnant that was taken by Babylon. So Daniel was part of that. So Daniel was part of that remnant. And in Ezekiel chapter 9, we're going to look at it later. But we believe Daniel, he prayed against the abominations. You can see Daniel's prayer in Daniel chapter 9. And we believe he was sealed by the man clothed with white linen before the captivity. So he was sealed, he was set apart, and he was taken to Babylon as the first captives. Now, the reason we're saying he's sealed, okay, is that's Ezekiel. Ezekiel says that. Ezekiel sees 6 men with weapons in the city, and one of them clothed with linen, with the inkhorn or writing case by his side. And he says, go through the city and set a mark or a taw upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and groan and cry over the abominations that are done. And the weapons cannot touch those with the seal. Okay, so this is just like the seal in Revelation 7. Okay, those that are sealed. And then when we see the plagues and you see the locusts, okay, the locusts could not touch those with the seal. Okay, so Daniel had something similar where he was the remnant, okay, crying out for the abominations that were taking place. And then he, of course, was not subject to the judgment and plagues, but then, goes to Babylon first. Okay, so we could see that Daniel probably was one that was sealed by the men in white linen. Now, once we get into Daniel chapter 4, Daniel is recognized as having the spirit of the holy gods. Okay, Daniel, in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. He was the master of the magicians. So now this word holy, you can see in the Aramaic kadesis, or it's the Hebrew word kodesh. So holy, kodesh. Now this word can mean holy. It can also mean saints. So you can interpret this word as holy. You can also see this translated many times as the saints. So when Daniel was taken to Babylon and he interpreted the dreams, he was recognized. He was ruler over the class of, the different types of prophets and stuff, magicians. All right. But he was recognized as having the holy. Now God's is Elohim. So he had the holy. He was he was coming from the spirit, the ruach of the holy Elohim. So they recognized Daniel and place him in rulership over those that would interpret dreams and do things like that, right? Okay. Well, back in Daniel chapter 3:21, the Hebrew boys were clothed in linen. It doesn't say specifically linen, but what it says is they had coats, trousers, turbans. Okay, so what they have in garments. So what they're describing here in Daniel 3, this is when they refused to bow to the image, okay, and they put on their garments. And he said, we will not bow to your image, O king. We will not bow to your image, whether God preserves us or not. We don't care. We're not bowing. Okay, but they were of the tribe of Judah. Yet they had the priestly garments. Okay, so they're walking in white. They're walking in authority. They're walking by having their garments clean in Babylon. And in doing so, it's just like the procedure in Zechariah chapter 3 of having these garments, guys. We have other videos on that. We'll place links. But that's what they did. Okay? Then they were thrown in the furnace, and there was one in there like the Son of God. Okay? So, that's the counsel. So they were preserved. Okay? So Daniel begins to enter this counsel of the saints. All right? And then we go back to Daniel 4, verse 13. Nebuchadnezzar says, I saw in the vision a watcher. Okay? Now, watcher in the Aramaic is like hour or ear. Okay? It's a watcher. It's an angel. And a holy one come down from heaven. Okay? So he saw the vision. This is what we said, guys, is that, the Antichrist is also subject to these decrees. And then he tells them, verse 17, the matter is by decree of the watchers. Okay, the watchers, the ear, okay, and the demand by the word of the holy ones. So this is a counsel, guys. Hope you're beginning to see that. So the watchers is angels, and holy one, Kodesh, is the saints, okay, that the people would know by the word of the holy ones that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men. So that even at this time, we can see the Antichrist subject being stripped of his dominion, like two wings of an eagle, okay, from the lion, that we would know the Most High rules the kingdoms of men. That's the decree of the council, even in our day, okay? So Daniel has quickly entered this council, entered this, being recognized as a saint himself, and also interpreting when the watchers and the saints appear in visions to others. So in Daniel 5:5, he does it again. In the same hour, the watcher of the fingers of a man's hand wrote next to the candlestick, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Peres. Okay? So Daniel once again saw the angel writing on the wall, okay, the finger of God, and the finger of God also wrote on the tables of stone. Okay? So Daniel is continuing in the prophecies to recognize this counsel. Okay, now we're on page 2 of our notes. Okay, and who these holy ones are. Okay? So then, in Daniel chapter 7, Daniel says, I came near to one of them that stood by. So now he has these visions, and in these visions, these men in white linen, or council of the saints, appear. And I came into one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of this. So the men in white linen give the interpretation. So he told me the interpretation and the things he made known to me. Okay, so that's Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 8. When I heard one saint, okay, Kodesh, holy one saint, speaking to one saint, Kodesh, another holy one. We have two saints. Remember how we saw before how there's two witnesses, okay? Two that are bearing witness to the testimony of Jesus. Okay, to that certain. Now, I'm going to do this quickly. Those that study and that are interested in this, study this. This is amazing. But it's not common for angels and their names to be mentioned in the Bible. But it's quite possible this word of one of these saints called certain, okay, in the Aramaic is palaumi, okay? Now, if we look at the root of this word, okay, we can find, okay, let's continue the statement, and we'll look at the word in a second. But one saint speaking to another who was speaking, and he said, how long is the vision? Okay, so we have the two saints, and he's asking the question, one saint to another, how long is the vision? All right, and then we'll look at those statements later. We can see here, we're going to talk about the next verses. But this one, palaumni, okay, the certain is Strong's Concordance H6422, has a root word 6423. And what we're getting at, guys, when we do this study, what we're showing you right here is that there are things that are coded into the scriptures that when you go to the original language, okay, when we look at his name, okay, Palauni, all right, the Hebrew has root words. So in the root words of this name, we look at the root word, we can find that this person or the angel here, his types and shadows, his ways are found in other places in the Bible. For example, in Ruth chapter 4, these are the elders that bore witness to Boaz of the kinsman redeemer. So these are the elders, and these angels are like the 24 elders in the book of Revelation that explain to John the prophecy. Okay, so we find one of them with this word, okay, Pala, okay, Pala. You can see here, a certain unnamed one. So this is in Ruth, okay, and that root word, okay, is H6395, which means separated or to sever, okay? And this we showed you in the book of Exodus, how the children of Israel were separated from the plagues of Egypt. Okay, so the plagues hit Egypt, but they didn't hit them, and that there would be a separation, a severing, a distinction, okay, between Egypt and the children of Israel, all right? And the root word of that is wonders. Okay, now, if this is a little confusing and you don't know these words or you're a little lost here, let me just make it simple. All right, you know the soccer player, his name is Pele, right? Well, that's one of the ways we can pronounce this word. And one of these words is Pele. So think about Pele's name, all right? But what it means is wonderful. Okay? So that could be his name. Okay, so even Christ, his name, Wonderful Counselor. So the word wonderful is one of these. I forget which one. I think it's either this one or this one. But it also means secret. Okay, I think it's this one. I think it's Pele, 6382. I forget. But anyway, this word is used again in Daniel chapter 12, verse 6, when the end of these wonders. Okay, so that's why we consider that this angel, this order of angels, okay, is the ones interpreting the prophecy. Okay, and the word can mean secret. Strong's H6383. Okay, which you can see in Judges 13:18. Okay, and there it's Peli. Okay. It means wonderful. So his name was secret. His name was wonderful. Okay. So as we said, we can see the connection with this saint, wonderful, with the two by the river in Daniel chapter 12, verse 5. Okay. When he asked, how long shall be these wonders? Okay. Pela. Now, this is important because, guys, this is how you interpret the scriptures. Okay, I know many of the interpretations, things on this channel that people don't like, but I can prove it. Okay, I can prove it by studying like this and showing these details. Yes, the two saints that are in Daniel 8 are in Daniel 12. Okay, now let's continue with this. And another important word that we see here is the olive and the tav. Okay, so in Daniel 8:15, when I, Daniel, had seen the vision, that's what it says when you read it in English, but there's an untranslated word with an olive and a tav there, okay? So now this is Alpha and Omega. This is a signature happening here, something very significant. In the vision, I sought for the meaning. Behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man, okay? So Daniel sought the vision of olive tav, okay, the testimony of Jesus, okay, is the spirit of prophecy. He sought the vision, okay, for the meaning. Behold, there stood by me appearance of a man. Now, in Daniel 10:18, we know this to be Gabriel. Okay, so Gabriel is there, and then another voice from a man between the river called and said, hey, Gabriel, make this man understand the olive tav vision. the testimony of Jesus. Okay, so the angel Gabriel then gives Daniel the interpretation. All right. But what do we see? We heard a voice of a man between the rivers. Now, who's that? Well, we're going to look at that in a second. Be patient. All right. Now, so we could see that those two guys, all right, that were on either side of the river. And then there was a voice above the river. This makes sense once we get to Daniel 12. And I, Daniel, look, behold, there stood over two, one on this side of the bank of the river, one on that side of the bank of the river. Okay, so now we're in Daniel 12, and he sees two. Well, these are the same two we saw in Daniel 8. We can prove that. In verse 6, and one said to the man clothed in linen, who was upon the waters. Okay, so this is the same thing we just read. And I heard the voice of a man between the Ulai, the river. There was a voice, okay, between, okay, the river. There was a voice above that. He didn't see who it was. He just heard the voice up there. Well, in chapter 12, verse 6, one said to the one clothed in white linen who was upon the waters of the river. Okay, so he's either standing on the water or above it, whatever. He's there. And they asked him, how long shall be the end of these wonders? Okay, remember how we saw the wonders. Okay, the angel's name, wonderful, Pele. Okay, and I heard Aleph Tav, man clothed in linen, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven. Okay, so again, we have a man clothed with white linen with the seal, with the authorization. Okay, and he held up his right hand and left hand to heaven. Now, that gives us the players, those involved in the interpretation in Daniel chapter 8 and 12. This is very, very important. We're going to have to explain the dates later in another video. But as we conclude, we showed you before the Ezekiel chapter 9, 6 men with weapons over the city. The one having the seal of God was clothed in linen. Okay, we got a whole video on that. That's one of the 4 angels, okay? We have a whole video just explaining that already. We're not going to explain it here. But as we conclude, we want to go back to the testimony of Jesus. Well, this is a mystery, guys. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 13, the Apostle Paul is speaking to Timothy, and he says, bring the cloak. Now, what we're going to suggest is that when he's speaking to Timothy here, this is prophetic. This is prophecy. This is something that will be fulfilled in the end of days. So he says, bring the cloak. We believe that to be the Shroud of Turin. Yes, on this channel, we believe the Shroud of Turin to be authentic. A link in the description field will show the Shroud of Turin exhibit that is in Jerusalem. We did a whole presentation and video on the Shroud of Turin in Jerusalem, okay, to be Christ. We're bearing witness to Christ. He was the one clothed in white linen, okay? And that actual white linen would exist to our day to give a testimony of Jesus, okay, which is the spirit of prophecy. So he said, bring the cloak, bring the Shroud of Turin that I left in Troas with Carpus, and when you come, bring the books, okay, especially the parchments, the sheepskins. So the books we believe to be the Dead Sea Scrolls, so that in the end of days, the Shroud of Turin, okay, will bear witness to the testimony of Jesus, which is the spirit of prophecy, and the Dead Sea Scrolls would also bear witness that Christ is himself the Messiah. So thanks for watching. These are the men clothed in white linen, okay? The white linen is also described as the righteousness of the saints. I encourage you guys to please follow the other messages we're going to have. We're going to have these notes here, and we're also going to have the previous videos and series. Now, the best thing to do is, I know it takes a lot to download videos and things like that. I encourage you to download videos. If you can't do that, get all these notes in the PDF files, okay? What you can do is you can just reference those where we have discussed this, okay? Because all we're doing was we're just showing you the Bible, just showing you the prophecy. We're showing you the testimony of Jesus, okay? He is the man clothed in white linen. And then there's also the counsel of the saints of those clothed in white linen. This will be part of our playlist, 1,260 Days. The Lamb reigns 1,260 days. And the angelic orders around the throne in the book of Revelation and throughout the scriptures. Okay? So guys, thanks for watching. And as we say, fear God, give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him that made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the fountains of waters. Amen.